Okay, great. Looks like people are filtering in. Um, Welcome to the Business Analytics Overview webinar. Today, we're going to walk you through the Wharton and Emeritus class on Business Analytics. We'll talk you through some of the stuff you'll learn, some of the faculty that you'll engage with, and really just explain how we built this thing and how you'd interact with it. So, my name is Tim Flannery, and I'm one of the program leaders. Think of me as a TA to this class. And I'm joined by Don Huesman. Really quickly, my background is I'm a Wharton MBA grad, class of 2018. I currently work at a startup called Carta. My background is in operations and product and analytics. So I've taken a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about over the next hour and actually put it into practice, which has been pretty fun. And I'm joined by Don Huesman. Don, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm the managing director for online learning here at the Wharton School, and I've been involved with all the faculty as we've built out this course, the learning objectives and the modules and the different exercises we'll be putting in front of you. So we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Okay, great. Thanks, Don. So I guess the question is, you're here to learn about the business analytics course. Why would you want to join this course? And so people join because they want to figure out how they can use analytics to be better in their business. What data should they actually collect and how do they actually want to use it? And then how are other people using it? You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And finally, what can you actually learn from this data? And how can you take it and leverage it? And so the course is a pretty good fit if really you just want to learn more about data analytics. So you want to understand what are the building blocks for when people are taking a look at how to collect information and then how to build analysis on top of it. Or maybe you actually have an analytics team that you're in charge of. Maybe you're a general manager or a CEO of your own business, whatever it might be. And you want to just actually speak the same language as them. And then you also want to figure out how to do that same thing, but you want to be able to leverage analytics outside of that team across pretty much everything that you're doing. So if this is what the course is for, what the course is not for, and we'll get ahead of it now, is turning you into a data scientist. Our goal is not to have you become fluent in R or Python or whatever it might be. Our goal is to arm you with a set of tools so that you can go out and you can make informed decisions about what's going on in your world. And by the way, as you guys have questions for us today, you can see that there's a Q&A button. If you could just submit those questions using the Q&A button, it'll help Don and I track what's going on and we'll be able to answer them at the end of the webinar. And so then I guess the question is, why would you do it through Wharton? And with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Don.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yeah, the Wharton is not known as an engineering school because we're not an engineering school. The University of Pennsylvania, which is where Wharton is located, does have an engineering school, and we work closely with them on various kinds of programs. But as Tim points out, the point here is to be a general manager. The point here is to understand how does the world of analytics, and especially the new capabilities and new tools that have emerged in recent years, how does that affect your ability as a general manager to make better decisions? So the fundamental reason to take this class is to make better decisions. So if those decisions help your business become more profitable, more efficient, more effective, better positioned within your market, that's the big value from taking this class. If it, on the other hand, is a way that you can demonstrate your value within your existing corporation by getting better and more effective and efficient yourself at informing decisions that are being made across the organization by the use of data analytics, then you come to the right place. So the story about Wharton is that we're very often in the marketplace thought of as a finance school. But the truth of the matter is Wharton has a deeper history in analytics than that. Tim, if you give me the next slide. This is a picture of our current dean, Jeff Garrett, who we were all sad to see is announced that a year from now he's going to leave us and join another school. But he's been great the last 5 years as the lead of the school. And his take on how Wharton is positioned in the marketplace vis-a-vis our sister schools, our competitive schools, to ask and answer the question, if you or your child was admitted to Stanford and Harvard and INSEAD and IMD and Wharton, why would you pick Wharton? And his belief is that the distinguishing feature of Wharton is its deep history in analytics and in empirical data. The school started long ago in the effort to inform business decisions by collecting and using metrics, building predictive models, and identifying prescriptive decisions associated with optimizing business decisions. And as an example of that, let me ask Tim to take us to the next slide. We have a history that starts in the 19th century with work developing business models and decision-making based around the collection of empirical data. This is Emory Johnson, who's a professor here at the school in the early 20th century, and was dean in the early 20th century, hired in the late 19th century. And in his work, he had collected data on the fees and costs associated with moving goods and services through the inland waterways of the United States, which was a significant method of transportation in the late 19th century in North America. That data directly informed efforts to build models for understanding how to build the fee structure for ships that would be traversing the newly built Panama Canal. So from those early days, the idea of collecting empirical data to help us understand better and model business circumstances and do what-if scenarios around the various fees we might charge for our products and services has been part of the DNA of the school. If I could ask Tim to give us the next slide. In the 20th century, the school built itself out into a collection of new departments. So Wharton was the first collegiate-based business school on earth in 1881. And the idea at the time was to try to take the science, the social scientific methods that had been developed, focusing on other topics, and apply them to the institutions of business. And so this kind of combination of a scholarly empirical research orientation with an applied set of students who were about to go into general management or leadership positions in the emergent economy of the post-industrial age of the early 20th century was at the heart of what the school's mission was at the time. So as the 20th century developed and the field of business sort of emerged into specific disciplines, you saw this orientation towards an empirical approach to the study of business show itself in various research efforts here at the school. So Joseph Willits created the very first business school research center, the Industrial Research Unit. That unit is still here. It's now called the Center for Human Resources. But in the 1920s, this was the beginning of the time and motion studies in factories where people would take clipboards and measure the movement of goods and raw materials and people and labor through a large factory setting to identify bottlenecks and to develop optimized routines. So that was in the 1920s. And again, that was in the field more of operations management. Paul Green sort of reinvented the world of marketing in the 1960s by again taking this sort of empirical analytical approach to what had been until that time thought to be largely a creative exercise. Marketing was thought more to be a matter of both aesthetic and intellectually creative exercise to understand how to develop collateral that would be appealing to a particular market segment. Paul Green developed a science around understanding those segments, understanding preferences, understanding choice processes by large numbers of consumers, and in the process invented contemporary market research. You'll be hearing from some of our marketing faculty talking to these issues if you choose to join the class. In the 1970s, Professor Simon Kuznets had worked in the early development of a field that's now known as econometrics. Professor Kuznets joined the FDR administration during the war to understand the change that was happening in the 1940s in the United States as we moved from a peacetime footing to a wartime footing. In that process, converting manufacturing for automobiles and farm equipment, that kind of thing, into material for war. And in that effort, he built a model of the flow of raw materials, goods and services, components of manufactured end product through the entire US economy. And in that process of trying to do what Professor Willits had done in a given factory, which is to understand the bottlenecks that would exist in the economy as we attempted to shift to a wartime footing. Professor Kuznets took that set of methods and the people who he had gathered together to do that study after the war, to study other areas besides manufacturing, the service sector, the agricultural sector, other sectors of the economy, to the point at which he built out an entire model of the US economy. And that he referred to as one of the outputs of the economy. Yeah, he termed gross domestic product or GDP. So that was all thought work done here from the empirical scientists who were part of the Wharton School faculty. And that informs, these are the folks who hired the current faculty. So they, and in some cases, who trained the current faculty. Lawrence Klein picked up on the work that Kuznets had done in order to build out predictive models, which began the fundamental work of econometrics, where we could ask questions like, what would a given tax policy or a tariff or a change in government policy associated with business processes, how might that affect output variables like GDP? So that kind of development of thinking is what we're trying to help you do with your business, to work through the collection of raw data of understanding what's really happening in your business into the building of an understanding of the variables that might affect each other, correlations, regression analysis that might help you understand how one variable affects another, and ultimately building out predictive models that would help you make better decisions. So the work that was done throughout the 20th century and building that out, we will be attempting to share with you as we address the new affordances and constraints of contemporary data, data that is now vast compared to the data that was available to us in the past. So let me ask Tim to give us the next slide. As we moved into the 21st century, the Wharton Research Centers from the 20th century have maintained this belief that the best knowledge that emerges out of a business research initiative is when you put together top scholars who study from a dispassionate perspective from the ivory tower, a given aspect of business, looking at all the competitors in a different environment. And you combine that thinking, that analysis with very research-oriented top practitioners. So in that world, we have had a series of white papers over the 20th century that informed government policy and changes in business operations by putting together research scholars with top practitioners. And that's what our approach is in this class. So my job is to bring you the top scholars in the world in these different fields of applied data analytics in business decision-making. Your job is to be those top practitioners. And we're hoping that through an interaction between these two groups of people, we can generate knowledge that neither group could develop well on their own. Tim, if you give me the next slide. As we moved into the 20th century, the school has developed up to 20 now fully staffed and funded research centers, 21, we actually added one last week, that have taken the lens of a particular discipline and understood how does data inform decisions in a particular field. So for example, in the field of people analytics, an area that is woefully underserved in terms of data servicing, decision-making regarding hiring, regarding rewards and retention of key high potential staff and promotion decisions. An area that for some reason, a lot of leadership in companies have chosen to make decisions that are based on sort of a gut feel. This class is intended to be an antidote for that tendency on all of our parts to make decisions based on a gut feel. Gut feel is not reliable. So we're hoping to apply science to decisions that in the past have been made in a more haphazard manner. People analytics scholars are focusing in the area of HR management in regards to understanding how data informs HR decisions. We, in addition, will have members joining us from other research centers around the school. Let me ask Tim to give me the next slide in that case. And at this point, I think what we should do is, before we look specifically at the scholars we're going to bring to the table for you to interact with, Tim's going to give us general view of the structure of the class and how we go about trying to reach learning objectives.
Thanks, Don. So we're going to basically walk through a lot of the things that you're going to learn over the 10 weeks of this course. But our goal here isn't to explain everything. It's just to give you a taste and a flavor. So we're going to really talk about 3 different ways of doing analytics. One is descriptive, which is what's actually the structure of the data? What information are we collecting, and how can we just scrub it and make sure that everything here makes sense? And what are the features of it? Then we're going to do predictive analytics, which is, all right, we have this data set. We understand how it works. We understand the different pieces that we've collected. Now, how do we use it to go predict something in the future? So we've watched sales in the past. How do we use that to predict sales in the future? And then we're going to talk about how we can use that to make decisions, which is where prescriptive analytics comes in. So not just how can we predict the future, but how can we take a look at the impact on revenue or on profit or whatever it might be, so that we can make the best decisions for our business. And so for all of these topics, we're going to jump in and we're going to take a look at a bunch of different tools. So we're going to be spending a lot of time in Excel showing you things like how to just do regression in Excel, how to take a look and do different trend analysis, stuff like that. And so we're going to walk through Excel and a few other different things and show you all of these different methods and approaches. And then we're going to take a look at real world applications too. So we'll walk through a lot of different things over the course throughout the instruction, talking about how people are actually applying it. And then we'll also have a case, or we'll have, even in 1 week, a simulation where you can actually take these lessons and apply them. So week 1 is descriptive analytics with Raghu Iyengar. And so Professor Iyengar will talk to you about this thing that you might have heard of called Net Promoter Score, NPS. And so really it's, how do we go out and how do we collect all this information from people? How do we effectively build a survey? And then how do we take all of that information in and balance what do we need to capture from a quantitative side and from a qualitative side? And how do we go out and actually track all of this stuff going forward? Do we track it by actively asking people, or is it passive because we can measure people's behaviors? What's the importance of different kinds of data? For instance, demographics versus product usage. And then in week 2, we're going to walk through how to go out and start to predict future events. So we're going to take a look at at an airline example where we're going to say, all right, let's take a look at the sales of an airline over time. And we can see that there's some seasonality where people travel more in the summer and travel less in the first quarter. And so how do we actually go out and say, what's the underlying trend to sales, even when you account for all of that different noise related to seasons? And so we're actually going to talk about deseasonalizing data. So basically using historical information to estimate forecast for future events. And then we have predictive analytics. So this is actually my favorite module. This is my favorite part of analytics, period. We're going to talk about 2 different views of the world. One is the deterministic view. That is, if we can observe something and we can measure it, we can use that observed behavior to go out and predict the future. So for instance, sales of my product is going to be a function of how much money I've spent on advertising and what the current price is of my product. Pretty easy, we can understand that. But what if we actually don't believe that we can observe everything that we need to predict the future? And that's where Pete Fader comes in. So this is, Raghu will talk about the deterministic view of the world, and Pete will come in and he'll start telling you about maybe we actually can't observe everything. And what if we just say that people behave randomly? And why don't we just build some probability models instead? We'll talk about all of the implications for how to take a look at people as if they behave randomly, and it's just this spread of different behaviors across the population. And then we start jumping into optimization. So we have all this different information about a problem, where maybe we know what it costs to move something between these 2 places, what are our capacity constraints, and we have a goal, and that goal might be to minimize cost or maximize revenue or maximize profit, whatever it would be. And turns out we can actually take that information and we can use it to find the actual best answer, not a good answer, the best answer. And so we'll use Solver on Excel to optimize for that best answer. But what if we don't know as much about the world as we think we do? So we had this world where we had all this certainty around how much people could produce, or how much we could transport back and forth, or what capacity looks like, or what demand looks like. What if we actually don't know that? What if there is just this true uncertainty? How do we capture it? And that's where week 5 comes in. And we start taking a look at, okay, maybe there's actually some variability in what demand looks like. And so how do we account for that? Maybe we have an average demand of X, but maybe we have this thing called standard deviation where we see that average demand is variable. And so how do we make a decision when we don't actually know if people are going to buy the amount that we expect that they are? And so that's where we'll start taking a look at things called scenario analysis, and we'll run simulation models so that you can go out and model out this uncertainty in the world. Week 6 is getting back to what Don talked about earlier, which is people analytics. So this is really an application of what we've talked about already. So we've gone through a bunch of different things. We've looked at regression. We've looked at, in this case, we'll start talking about multi-regression, which is not just the impact of one variable on an output, but the impact of multiple variables. And how do you use that to figure out, all right, what's the best method for me to hire people? What's the best method for me to take a look at predictors of employee success or employee attrition, whatever it might be? And so this week is just taking analytics and applying it to the HR function, which it absolutely needs. Even the base level of analytics applied to HR will improve your outcomes. So week 7, we are talking about how to make some more decisions around, really we start digging into pricing. And this week we touch a little bit on optimization, but optimization as it relates to this thing called willingness to pay, which is a concept from microeconomics. So how much is an individual willing to pay for a certain good, or for the next good, or for whatever it might be? And how does that actually go out and impact the decisions that you're going to make around your competition, for instance? So if you make a change to price, what are they going to do? And how does that impact everything else that you're going on? So this is basically different models for pricing services and estimating demand. And then in week 8, Professor Noah Gans is going to walk us through the idea of the decision tree. And so this is taking a view of how do we take all of these different scenarios that we've solved for with all of these different possible outcomes, and then how do we start making all of these decisions around it? And so we build a tree, and this tree could say, all right, you know what, we want to take a strategy where we're going to make as much profit as possible. We don't care what the possible downsides are. Let's just go for the one that maximizes the best possible chance of profit, or the chance of the highest profit. Or you can say we want to be risk averse. We're going to minimize any chance of losses. So what's the path that we can take that'll make sure that we have the lowest amount of losses, or whatever it is that we want to get in there? We just don't want to accept risk. Or maybe it's risk neutral. And that's where we talk about this idea of expected value, where we go out and we take a look at a situation and we expect that, maybe there's a 50% chance that we win some money here, 50% chance that we lose some money. But if you just take the average of those two things, then you can take a look at what the average outcome is. And you can just say, all right, I'm risk neutral. Here's kind of my expectations of the world. And this is how I would build out my decisions if I just expect things to play out as they will. And then in week 9, our wrap-up week, we'll talk about the different applications of analytics across some of the top companies in the world. So how are these people actually using analytics to do things that you might never have expected? How are they using it to figure out, where do you put stuff in a grocery store based on how people will walk through a grocery store? That's actually a topic that we'll cover. And it's pretty impressive what people are able to do on this. And then throughout the course, we're going to go through a bunch of different frameworks. So the first is the buy till you die framework. This is Pete Fader and probability world. So people will keep buying and buying, and how do you predict their frequency of buying? And so this is a probability model of predicting the frequency of purchases over time. We'll talk about how to actually measure errors in your forecast. So you build a forecast, then you should take a look and see how it's actually doing. So how do you measure that? And then we'll take a look at this thing called the AF ratio, which is, again, taking a look at your historical accuracy and then maybe just adjusting on it for the future. And then we'll take a look at the regression. So in this case, you will be able to take a look at past data, fit a line to it, and then use it to figure out future data. And so we're going to have a bunch of different webinars. Chris Eitner will be doing a couple of them. Chris is actually the faculty sponsor of this course. Raghu Iyengar will talk through some of his research, and Pete Vader will do the exact same thing. And so Pete, for instance, he uses this idea of customer lifetime value, CLV, which is a function of how much money people will give your company over time and how long they will remain customers. And he'll talk about his research where he's actually going out and valuing companies from the ground up on how many customers they have and how much they expect how much he expects each customer to actually contribute in revenue. So if you sum all that together, should be all the future cash flows. Congratulations, you can go value a business. So really fascinating stuff. This is where they'll bring their most current work to the course, and you can ask them your questions, and frankly, it's a great example. It's a great time where you can actually challenge them on their beliefs, and maybe they'll challenge your beliefs too. So we're going to go through a bunch of different cases. We are going to talk about how to do some scheduling. We'll talk about how to do demand forecasting. So we'll take a look at cases from a bunch of different places, and we will also go through a simulation where you, in a risk-free way, can actually take all the stuff that you've learned in this course and apply it. So you can play around with things like the price of a product. Where do you want to allocate your channel spend? What do you estimate the demand to be in a given time period? And how do you just balance all these different things? And then at the entire time, you're going to have help that's ready for you. So you'll have the webinars where you can engage with the professors, but throughout the course, you'll be able to engage with folks like me. I'm one of your program leaders, and there's 5 other program leaders like me. And so we'll work with each cohort, and we'll talk through whatever questions you have. So if it's office hours, you can come in and we'll go through either the material, or we'll answer just whatever issues you're facing, or if it's a weekly Q&A board where everybody from the class can engage with each other. And by the way, just everybody here comes with a lot of different experience. My experience, I, for instance, did a really interesting project at Sony PlayStation where I segmented their entire customer base and then took a look at the customer lifetime value for each segment so that we could prioritize who to acquire, et cetera. My colleague, Deborah, she is a professor, so she brings an academic viewpoint. Our other colleague, Joanna, is in the Philadelphia Flyers analytics department. And so she's seen how all of this is applied to sports. So everybody here is a practitioner and has actually taken all the stuff that we'll talk about in this course, and we've used it. So we can bring our own experiences to boot. And frankly, if you don't take advantage of those office hours, if you don't take advantage of those course leaders, you're probably not going to get the most out of this course. All right, so look, here's why you would join. You want to understand how to actually go out and collect data, and then you want to understand what that data means. So that's where you gain some insight. And the way that you do that is we give you a bunch of tools. And these tools are going to be in Excel, and people will say, well, what about R? What about SQL? What about whatever? Honestly, these are the building blocks to whatever type of analysis you need. And so not only are we going to give you those tools, but then we'll also show you how everybody else is using it too. And then you can go out on your own and make better decisions about what's going on in your work environment. If you successfully complete the course, you will receive a certificate saying that you have completed this from the Wharton School Executive Education Group. And if you'd like to sign up, here's the next steps. And I'm sure our program support team will share this with you. We hope to have you join us. And now we're here for your questions. So that's it. We wanted to run through things pretty quickly. We've got about 30 minutes. So please let us know your questions and we are happy to address them.
Tim, thanks. I saw a couple of questions come by about who's teaching the course, and just to emphasize again, everyone who is teaching the course in the pre-recorded videos as well as the faculty webinars are standing members, so that they're all full professors, tenured faculty here at the Wharton School. And in many cases, Chris, for instance, is the chairman of the accounting department. He's an economist also by trade. Pete Fader is one of the founders of the Customer Analytics Initiative. So we've brought for you both in terms of the pre-recorded material as well as the live webinars, the top faculty in the world in these spaces. So one of the things I want to again emphasize is that if you choose to join this class, it's really important that you understand that we need you to bring your best game to the table. So this is not intended to be sort of a more of a passive experience where you're sitting back and watching experts talk about large concepts. We need you to be there asking hard questions. So the idea is to do your homework in advance, to stay up to speed with regards to the flow of the cohort through this material. And when we have these opportunities, both in terms of the weekly office hours with the program leaders, as well as the hour we spend with the faculty every other week, we need you to bring your best, hardest questions to the table, because that's what they want to. They want to hear from you, from your context, in your region, in your industry, how these ideas are playing out or not playing out. So the faculty, yes, are all both Wharton affiliated program leaders as well as standing members of the Wharton faculty. Wharton Online only uses standing members of the Wharton faculty. We don't use consultants or adjuncts generally. Tim Hine asks, will the course teach us how to build predictive models or focus only on how to interpret them? So the answer is that we will give you illustrations and examples and small spreadsheets that show you predictive models. So Sergey 7, for instance, will be providing for you small optimization models that are used with Excel and with Solver to come up with an ideal answer to a circumstance like a contract negotiation where things are known. A related question, this was, what kind of tools do you need to buy to take the class? So we will rely heavily on Excel. Much of what we're doing will be available to you through Google Sheets as well, which is of course a free source of a spreadsheet. We do use the data analytics packages, which are in both of those programs. We will be using Solver for the optimization exercises that I mentioned that Sergey is doing. And that is a built-in component of Excel, but you might need your IT group to help you make sure it's active. But it's built into the purchase of Excel typically.
Yeah. So just to build on that pretty quickly, Solver will actually walk you through how to add it to Excel or to Sheets or whatever. That's part of the course, so you're all set there. But yes, we will teach you how to build predictive models. We're not going to teach you how to build the most complex model of all time. We're going to give you, I've said it before, the building blocks. We'll teach you how to do a regression. We'll teach you how to do a multi-regression. We'll teach you how to simulate uncertainty. We'll teach you how to optimize around that. We'll teach you how to do all of these different things. And then how you want to apply it in your work life is up to you. Are we going to teach you everything around it? Definitely not. But this is going to give you the base that you can go out from. And it sounds stupid, but Google the right answer, because you'll actually have the right language. And so even myself, I use Stack Overflow. I Google and then get to a result on Stack Overflow, and that improves my model. So that's what practitioners do, and this will teach you how to do the exact same thing.
If I can pile on that too, Tim, that's also what scholars do. So in other words, one of the things you want to, again, think about as you're joining this class versus some others, that this is like an open inquiry with scholars who are working in research institutes around these topics today. So they're engaging in all cases with companies who are trying to make smarter decisions based on the new access to different forms of analytics, some of which are shaped by the new sources of big data that they've had, they now have available to themselves. So I think, so Julie Aguilar asked the question, I'm a business intelligence specialist working with SQL data warehouse SSIS, I wonder if that's SPSS, Microsoft Power BI. How will this program help me improve my technical skills to boost the progress done in analytics for my company? And the answer is it's probably not going to improve your technical skills at all. But the important thing, given your background, but the important thing is that the essence of this class is to get at the toughest part of business analytics, which has nothing to do with R or Python or Tableau or illustrating data flows. It's forming decisions that can be addressed by business models. So the idea here is to try your hand at understanding from the point of view of the C-suite or from the point of view of an executive sponsor in an organization, critical business decisions related to your own context and your own industry, and then to see how to form questions that new tools and new affordances through data have made deeper resources available to you as a general business person. So this class is not designed to help you understand and extend your technical capabilities in programming in R or statistics. A solid knowledge of some statistical concepts is very useful. If you understand what regression is or correlation, that will be very helpful. You'll probably pick up more if it's been a while since you studied those things by trying to study this class. Statistics is the heart of business analytics. It's the heart of artificial intelligence. It's very much important to the work that's done empirically in studies that are empirically based. So that would be helpful, but it's not critical. It's not a prerequisite. The key thing here is for you to understand your business and to probe your business and to see how can I take examples and illustrations that come from other top companies who are trying to apply data to their decision making and shape it from my situation. So that's where you're the expert. And again, it's not a technical skill, it's a business skill. And that's central to why you should take this class. If you wanted to take it like a purely R-based class, there's a great online class from Johns Hopkins I would recommend that you take instead. And if you are good at self-study, I would recommend too that there's lots of available books and resources on the internet for trying to understand regression analysis or statistical approaches to decision making. This is about an inquiry, a joint inquiry with top scholars, where you're the expert in your business, they're bringing best practice to the table, and they're, in most cases, encyclopedic knowledge of what the empirical research base is today. Let's see, what else we have here? Can you talk a little bit more about the organization of the cohort program? Specifically, will these be by time zone? This is Jamie writing from Tokyo. Tim, do you know how the cohorts work? I don't think there's a time zone approach, right?
No, there's not. So basically, we break it up so that people are in manageable sizes where people can interact with each other and not be overwhelmed and still be able to interact with folks. But everything here is kind of asynchronous. You don't need to sit next to each other. For instance, in week 1, we'll have everybody collaborate on building, within small teams, we'll have people building questionnaires. So you have a set of data, you have the situation, how would you go out and you collect the information that's important for whatever decision it is that you need to make. That's done using Google Sheets. So it doesn't rely on you being in a certain time zone. It doesn't it just says, okay, you guys can work together wherever you are. So no, I don't think we don't break it out by that. And I haven't really heard that as an issue. I have seen a couple other questions floating around asking about the timing of webinars and stuff like that, especially when people are based outside of the US. So we might as well cover that now.
Sure. I could take a shot at it, Tim, especially. I appreciate Jamie's asking about Tokyo, because Tokyo is at the moment like 13 hours, I think, offset from the eastern coast of the United States, which is where most of the faculty are based. So we do attempt to do a couple of things to help you deal with the time zone problem. One is that we ask you to, again, prepare for the sessions with the faculty. And again, I'm talking about the sessions with the faculty, program leader sessions, we'll talk about in a minute. But in the sessions with the faculty, we ask you to prepare for those in advance. If you are going to have trouble making one of the scheduled live webinars, please pass along to your program leader your questions associated with the material that week for that faculty member. We'll put them in front of the faculty member. The session will be recorded, and you can at least watch it in recording after the fact if you can't make it. I believe it's the case with the program leaders that there are different program leaders in different parts of the world. So Tim, can you talk to the scheduling of the program leader office hours?
Yeah, so we do have folks that are based in a bunch of different places. So essentially we host office hours so that if you're in Tokyo or Australia, or if you're sitting in New York City, or if you're somewhere in Europe, that we can still interact with you live during that. And let's say that, for instance, maybe somehow you're in sports analytics, so you really want to see what Joanna's covering in her office hours, then that's still recorded as well, and that's still shared with you. And so you can get a lot of different views on the same questions.
Also, one other thing too that people tend to not notice is the value of the cohort itself. Oftentimes you will find people from your region who are involved with the class and or people from your industry who may know between you and them may know more than the faculty do about your specific industry in your specific region. So there are lots of opportunities facilitated through the learning management system of the course for you to reach out to each other and to work on improving your understanding in the context of your own region or industry as a group together. So that's really very valuable, and I don't want to make I don't want to miss that. Let's see, there's another question here about Tableau and the extent to which how in depth we will go into understanding that. I don't think, as I recall, there was some discussion of Tableau, and there might have even been a slide or two by the faculty, but we're not really going to show you how to use Tableau. Now all the faculty who are involved in this are actively involved in the business of visualizing data today. So they all know these tools, they all use these tools. You can certainly ask them about best practice in terms of which tools are good for what kinds of purposes. But generally speaking, again, that's the real value of the interactions with the faculty are getting better at understanding how. I'll give you an example. So in this area of people analytics, which is on my mind for some reason today, the less than 10% of the companies that we have surveyed here through our People Analytics Initiative across the Fortune 500 in the United States have any good sense of the metrics that predict employee performance. So it's just like a brand new field almost. So the issue about building out specific visualizations of the data in this area is only useful if it gets us to move that needle so that we get better at understanding what variables actually predict performance. So the focus here is on making better business decisions. It's not on making better looking PowerPoint slides. It's about, helping you be understood as someone who uses data to inform decisions and models to understand that given a statistical likelihood of an outcome, you're making smart decisions based on what the data tells us. So that's the center of this class. Will this course cover quantitative methods applied to negotiation? That's an interesting question. I'm not sure I understand it exactly. I don't think there's a negotiation module. We teach.
Now, one of the examples that we'll walk through, it's actually a case, it's one of the assignments, is what's the impact of a series of negotiations over like a new initiative for, okay, we need to go out and we need to renegotiate these contracts. What happens if they don't re-sign? What happens? And it takes a look at the dollar value impact of it. So as a sales manager or as a general manager of that group, it's impactful for you to understand how that works. But look, this isn't a course on how to go out and be a salesperson, but as a salesperson, you understand that the best way for you to negotiate, or really it doesn't matter if you're in sales or anything else, the best way for you to negotiate is to take a look at an impact through metrics. And so all of the different things that we're going to look at. So whether it's helping you reduce your costs or improve your efficiency or reduce errors or whatever it might be, we're giving you tools so that you can go out and calculate those things so that you can use them as part of your negotiation. But this, to say that this is a course that specifically goes into how to negotiate, that would not be correct.
I might also mention too that there's some in the field of negotiations, there's a lot of value, I think, to actually coming to an in-person seminar. So all these different modalities have their strengths and weaknesses. This one is based around people who are probably busy professionals right now, can't afford to take a week off and go to a negotiation class somewhere. But if you can do that, there are classes we offer here on our Philadelphia campus, and lots of available good classes. Richard Schell is our key lead faculty in the area of understanding the empirical research around negotiation. So let's see here. What would be the right next course or courses to take after this cohort to build out our technical skills? So again, I won't hammer that nail again regarding the difference between our focus on business analytics and decision making versus technical skills. I think we've talked about that a lot. But there, what this anonymous question does let me do is describe the fact that this is a living inquiry. So we're talking about areas that a lot of this is not at all settled science. So if it were settled science, I'd recommend you just go get a book and read about it. So if you were studying, something that's been very clearly understood and known, and there's not a lot of new activity, then this isn't the right modality for that, because this is about joining the scholars who are trying to study this material right now and helping them apply it to your circumstance. But if you were rather interested in following up in specifics, one of the values of this class is that you will find out from the faculty you talk to where they go, what they're doing, what conferences they attend, what white papers do they read, where they get those white papers, what blogs do they follow, who in particular besides themselves do they follow on Twitter to see who, what the breakthroughs are in a particular area. So you're, in that sense, you're joining this kind of community of scholarship around the area or topic. Let's see. This is a good course. However, there are missing topics, mostly in the proper way of creating models and diagnostic testing. Anyone can create their model, but the question is, are all of these assumptions satisfied? What would be the remedy for this? So Hero, I think if I'm understanding your question, one of the things that I've heard Matthew Bidwell talk to on this is the issue about studying your predictive model. What happens if you have this predictive model and you discover that it's not very reliable, that it doesn't have much predictive reliability. It's not, there's too much noise. So several of the faculty will talk to this issue. And one of the reasons we put out the 3 sets of tools associated with descriptive statistics, predictive modeling, and then prescriptive statistics is to let you move between these 3 areas of activity as a researcher. So if your model isn't predicting behavior that's as expected, first of all, that's good. That's a finding. This is good to know that the stuff we believed, we thought predicted good outcomes isn't predicting good outcomes. That's an enormous hallelujah all by itself that you discovered that. Because now you can go back to the drawing board, which probably means going back to descriptive statistics. Maybe under those instances, you might need to find some additional data. Now, Chris Ittner, who's the the academic director for this class in general, always makes the point of saying, look, don't go getting data if you don't absolutely need to, because probably your organization is drowning in data. The problem isn't data. It's the fact that the data isn't formulated and connected in a way that lends itself to understanding your decisions and building predictive models. So, but if you need to go back to the drawing board and get data to understand, hey, looks like we missed it. There's something wrong in the model. It's not predicting the performance we were seeing. What could we have missed? Then you need to move back into descriptive statistics. So there's an art to it, I suppose, in addition to it being an empirical study. Let's see what else we have here. Am I correct? Chris Monaki asks, to assume that business analytics can improve econometrics, proper data collection, modeling and interpretation, significant, insignificant data, and projection? Yes, it's the short answer to that question. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's a tautology. I mean, yes, of course. I gave you a history of how econometrics emerged. So there's faculty from the 20th century that I showed you pictures of before. They, Lawrence Klein and others, Simon Kuznets, they built the science that's now referred to as econometrics, and they built it using these tools that we're trying to expose you to. So yes, proper data collection, looking for bias in your data collection, looking for bias in your models, looking for, predictive validity in your models, how to correctly interpret all of those things are critical to what the work of econometricians do, as well as the work we're doing in this class to help you make better decisions. Let's see here. Victor asked, how diverse would data examples be? For example, data from developing economies should be largely distinct from those from developed economies. And today's tomorrow would deal a lot with business growth in those economies. So do case studies cover global business with respect to diversity of data? So great question, Victor. We do put examples in front of you that are coming from the general business press that everybody understands and knows. Everybody's heard of Google and Netflix and Tencent and Alibaba. So those kinds of examples we bring to you because they're accessible to the whole cohort. However, the specifics related to your world and your field and your particular developing economy is you're the expert in. So we're hoping that you bring those issues to the table. Now, we have run this course many times, and we have lots of people from South Asia, from China, from Latin America, from Africa, who have joined the class and gotten a lot out of it. So the faculty are as interested in developing economies as they are in understanding the North American economy. I mean, 1 out of every 3 faculty members in the Wharton faculty are non-U.S. citizens. So it's a very diverse international group. You probably saw that from the photos that we showed you. So they have a global interest, and they consult all over the world. But the specifics about your location, your locale, and what makes sense or doesn't make sense, we're hoping you bring that to the table because you're the expert in that space.
Yeah, the only other thing that I'd add is we normally get a question of, I work in this industry or I work in that industry. Do you have a case that specifically deals with this industry or this location or whatever it is? The answer is that we might not. But the whole concept here is that we're giving you these tools that it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what industry that you're in. You can actually take these tools and still bring them in and apply them. They're still valid. They work. And so the goal is, how do you actually apply it in a work situation? We walk you through it. We work with you on that. And then you can go out and just put it to work in logistics or entertainment, or it doesn't matter. It's still valid.
Johnson Scaria asked this question. I'm rushing now because I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. Let's see. Preparing for the live seminars. What do you mean by this? How do we prepare and bring our best game to the table when we have the live seminars? So yes, there's material that's both on the learning management system and pre-recorded videos that we would hope that you would go over prior to the session with the faculty. So the faculty, ideally, when they come to the table, they're not using this as another way of presenting information. They want to take your Q&A. They want to interact. They want to find out what makes sense, what doesn't resonate from the materials that you reviewed already. So that material reviewed is asynchronously provided to you through videos and documents that are available on the learning management system. So just do that in advance of the session. So and then secondly, think about it, try to reflect on it, apply it to your own circumstance, formulate a question that you would put in this Q&A box when you come to the session for that faculty member. Let's see, Aditya Amin asked the question, is there a program focused on analytics in general? Are there a set of similar cohorts from Wharton which combined together can yield a higher level diploma? The quick answer to that is that this is our business analytics survey class that brings to you people from a whole variety of different disciplines, like HR, like customer analytics, like operations analytics. There are individual in-person seminars that focus for a a 50, 60-hour experience over the course of a week on one of those particular topics. So we have them here in Philadelphia on people analytics and customer analytics. And I believe in San Francisco, there's one as well done on operations analytics. But at any rate, those are in-person seminars if you can do that. As I say, all of these faculty are in the field, like they're leaders in this area. So they have conferences and white papers and that kind of thing that take you through the next step. But as you can tell from my description of these things, this is emergent. This is not settled. So this is something we're building together, and we're hoping to involve you in that process. And oh, yeah, also, this material is not intended for people who are looking to build a diploma or use this to build a, to lead to an MBA. There are some institutions around the world who use this material in their MBA programs and offer credit for it. So, for instance, the Vedika Scholars Program in Delhi uses this business analytics material for credit that they offer, but that's their thing. They're using it the way they use Harvard cases or whatever. So it's part of their credit-bearing program. So lots of universities around the world are doing that now in terms of taking advantage of resources available on the web to extend the reach of their own faculty and the ability to offer electives and study in specific areas. But this is not a credit-bearing class for Wharton or other places. This is really designed as a lifelong learning initiative. So this is us to involve ourselves with young professionals or mid-career professionals who are looking to skill up because something has changed. As in this case, everything has changed with regards to the availability of data to inform business decisions.
All right, Don. Last question, probably.
Yeah, let's see. How do you measure your success of past students from this course? So we do an awful lot of survey work. You're going to get one of these at the end of this session. That's a Survey Monkey asking you what we can do to improve this session. So to help you make a better decision about whether this is the class for you. But we'll do that for every week during the flow of the class. And we review that with the faculty. We make regular adjustments each time we run these programs. So that's one way we measure is through your satisfaction and your reports back of what worked or didn't work. However, the key thing that we're looking for is your ability to make better decisions. So that's going to happen after the class. So if you can make better decisions and you can demonstrate that in your organization, you're adding value in a couple of ways. You're adding value to the organization, and you're building your credibility within the organization, within the profession. And as you build up a skill set for doing that, you can take it from one company to the next. So this is an emergent field. It's going to be an important field. It's a big deal right now. Lots of people interested in finding potential candidates for positions who have some exposure to these business analytics concepts. But the big value is, can you make better decisions in the work you're doing today?
Yeah. Hey, Don, we had one quick follow-up question that I wanted to address before we wrapped up. Sure. From Alice, and saying, hey, so is this course about young professionals and mid-career? I'm beyond my mid-career. I'm in my 50s. Should I be in a different course? The answer is no. This course is still highly relevant. We see people from all over it. We see some people that come in immediately after college into it. We see some people that come in that are in the middle of their career, and some people that are realizing that now is the time when they need to finally understand what's going on in the analytics space. So it covers all of those different people. Frankly, I really enjoy working with people that have been around and had some experience that they can bring to the table. So no, please do not let that decide to keep you out of the course. I think that your experience actually makes the course better for everybody else who joins.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Alice, by the way, I'm of an age that I consider 55 to be a young professional. So yes, the extent to which you've had experience in your field, I mean, that's a huge resource for everybody else at the table. And they're, generally speaking, we have people with significant experience in their field joining these sessions, because this is not a self-study thing. This isn't like something an undergraduate would take. This is for professionals.
Okay. All right. So we're an hour in. Just quick for me, thanks for joining. I hope you guys learned something today. Don, wrap us up.
Thanks a lot to everybody. And again, if you choose to join us here, I hope that that you, number one, come prepared to the live sessions. Don't be polite. press the hard, embarrassing question that sort of helps poke a hole in a model or an expectation of the faculty. They love that. That's what they like. Smart students who challenge them. So we're hoping that, that's who you are. Practitioners who are expert in their field, who can tell when something makes sense and when it doesn't. And with
Okay.
that, wish you all the best of luck in all of your work to understand how to improve your decision-making in businesses wherever you are in the world.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.